All right, Chassos, just wanted to add this to the start of the video because while everything I was talking about was accurate and my impressions of it were, even to this point, unchanged, I didn't mention the core rules, which is a point of clarity that I always want to make, that all of my videos don't have ambiguity and I don't get a billion messages discussing the same thing. Me weighing in on this, I want to be as clear as possible, and this is the best way that I know how to achieve that. So, core rules. A unit is eligible to shoot unless any of the following apply. This unit advanced or this unit fell back. Now, it also counts for while you're in combat. You cannot shoot, except that if you're shooting into combat with pistols, like if any of your units have the pistol keyword, they are eligible to shoot and therefore they are eligible to guide. Now, and I fully understand that everything that I'm going to talk about, and then when your brain has to go down this line, this falls outside of what GW said about simplified but not simple. Though I still think that this was an actual proper choice by GW around balancing our faction. When you watch the video, do it through the lens that I'm about to talk about, but I stand by what I said. Eligibility to shoot isn't have you shot yet. Eligibility to shoot is have you advanced, have you fallen back, or are you in combat without pistols? Now, where this sticks out to me is when I look at our Markerlight, our marker drone. It gives you the Markerlight keyword, and it allows you to perform for the greater good ability, even if you've advanced. And when we're talking about this is where people have been getting tripped up that if they've already shot, they're not eligible to shoot. By rules as written, that's not actually true. Now, I understand everybody talking about rules as intended, and I get that. But I still think that potentially with everything I say at the end of the video, where we are on the bottom of the pile, we are not a strong faction when looked at in a light for any of the tier lists or anything else that we've done. The core rules don't prohibit us from doing it, and I actually don't see an abuse case of us being able to do this. So let's go down the chain. So I have Unit A that is a guided unit, and they are guided by Unit B. Unit A shoots with that guiding, and then we decide that Unit C is going to be guided by Unit A. Unit B cannot be guided because they are an observer. They will never be able to be guided for the rest of the turn. So Unit C shoots with Unit A guiding them on, and then Unit D shoots with Unit C guiding them on. And then we go down the chain and we go from there. Now, everything I said is still true. We are still a 4-up ballistic skill army, which didn't make sense in a world where we cop nerfs to number of shots and everything else. And bear in mind, nobody's saying that, oh, well, then a unit can just shoot multiple times, because it has the rule that each unit can only be selected to shoot once per phase. But we aren't selecting units to shoot. We are just checking, is a unit eligible to shoot? And for some people, that can be something to wrap your head around, and that doesn't make sense. But eligibility to shoot and selecting units to then select targets and make ranged attacks and whatever else are not part of the same sequence. And I think that's important for people to wrap their heads around, because technically speaking, looking at this, a unit that doesn't have ranged weapons is eligible to shoot, but cannot select targets and make ranged attacks. Which I know that part of it gets my brain a little bit, but this is the world we live in, and this is the part of 10th that we need to wrap our heads around, because there may be other rules that start coming out of the woodworks that interact with eligibility to shoot, but has nothing to do with somebody actually shooting somebody. And I think that that's important as well. Watch the rest of the video, watch it through that lens. I apologize that I didn't bring this up, but rules as written in the core rules, we're eligible to shoot as long as those things don't apply. So I know that it makes it convoluted and some people may not like that, but there are rules interactions which allow for some pretty awesome things for other armies, and I don't see why Tau can't have nice things as well. But don't make your mind up. Please hear me out until the end of the video and then make your mind up. I always think about the games in terms of what is fair and equitable and healthy for the game, and I'm more than happy to eat my hat if I'm wrong. I'm more than happy to be wrong. Hey, Chessos. So, take 4 of trying to record this video. A comment came up recently in my video about for the greater good rule being able to bounce and daisy chain down a line and have your entire army benefit. And this is something that I think is important for me to make a video on, because I can, instead of a wall of text or whatever else, I can be a lot more eloquent when I speak about something as opposed to when I'm just writing it. I'm not particularly a blogger or an article writer or anything like that. So basically the question came up that there is no rule that stops a guided unit from then becoming an observer unit. And the most important thing here is that it says when you select a unit to shoot, if it's not an observer, it can use this ability, excluding fortifications, battle shocked, and observer units. Now, initially my read of this was, as I think a lot of other people took it as, all right, once you're a guided unit, you cannot then be an observer. But that actually isn't the case. There's no line of text here which blocks out a guided unit from there for then observing for somebody else. Now, the question came up about rules as intended. And this, I think, is a very, very difficult thing for us to go down, where there are some rules as intended things that I think have a very, very clear outlay. And there are some things that have been overruled by places like, WTC that made a lot of sense to me and seemed very healthy for the game. One of those was the unchargeable interaction, where you could have a unit which was 1.1 inches away from a wall and therefore wasn't chargeable because they literally couldn't get onto the other side to charge you. They would have to go around whatever the footprint of your unit was, or go above you if there was a second floor. And if there wasn't a second floor and they couldn't go around you because the charge distance was enormous, well, tough shit, you couldn't charge me. WTC solved that by allowing charging units to occupy halfway through the wall, but once pile-ins consolidates were done, you could not stay in between halfway through a wall. And that in itself made a lot of sense to me, because having uninteractability was always just shit. It was terrible for the game. Now, the reason why I say now interpreting rules as intended is dangerous, because we honestly don't know. Now, yes, I think it's strong that your entire army can spot for one another, but from an actuality perspective, it's not actually, it's not uncommon for that to actually happen in a real-world military sense. If anybody knows my history, I am actually an Afghanistan veteran. And just because somebody was guiding my fall of shot onto something wouldn't mean that then I couldn't do the exact same thing for them when they were shooting at a target that I had better observation on from where I was. So this isn't like they're breaking the rules of physics or whatever else, but the point of, rules as intended is to stop abuse cases. Given some of the things that we have seen from our reduction in range, our reduction in AP, our commanders losing ballistic skill, our extreme lack of anti-tank, and without any tournament data whatsoever, I actually don't think one individual can say that this is unhealthy or healthy from the game. And until GW speak up, we also can't infer anything about their intentions. Because if it turns out that this is actually what was intended, and this was what our faction was balanced around, that may actually make a lot of sense for the nerfs that we cop to a lot of our profile. And I think really Tau players having passionate discussions about this just kind of shows how interested people are in having a balanced game, in having a fair experience. And I don't really want to get in the road of anybody wanting to have that fair experience. And we have seen the 10th has had some wording issues, and we've had everything else. But at the moment, there is nothing rules as written that stops us from doing it, and there is nothing to suggest that the GW's intention is for us not to have this ability. So yeah, it looks like everybody can, if you are not already an observer, that you can be guided as well. Which really does drive up the strength of what we're looking at. And I mean, let's be fair. Let's be fair. If you go and look at any tier list that's being made, I know that tier lists are a bit of a meme, but even just perception around the entire community, Tau is near the bottom. Tau is 100% near the bottom. Now, does this rule, being able to apply to everything, change that? In my opinion, kind of, yeah. Because it means that our army is then a ballistic skill 3 army. A base. And it means that we can ignore cover. And it also kind of makes sense that if you're going to do this down your army, you're not splitting fire anymore. You are firing at one unit. And that is this line of text down here. Worsen the ballistic skill characteristic of the attack by 1. I actually said in my review and in my initial thoughts on the faction focus that I thought it was stupid we were the only army that had a downside to our faction rule. But doesn't it kind of make sense now? If we were to look at, let's just say in a world where intention was from GW, that we were supposed to be able to have all of our units helping each other to guide on and whatever else. One, it creates a little bit of complexity in our shooting phase to use units in the proper order. Order of activation is still very important. And I have another video about order of activation, which is still relevant. So if you haven't seen, you're curious about what it is, and you want to see it active on the table, go and watch it now. But we're at the bottom of most tier lists and most people's perception of a faction. Wouldn't it make sense that everybody's looking at it through the lens that a unit can only be an observer once and cannot be guided if it's an observer? But if that's not true, and we can daisy chain, that drives up the strength of our faction and maybe puts it in a place. I don't think this makes us broken. If we were already on the bottom, I don't think something like this drives us up to broken territory, and I am willing to play this at least in a few games to get a read of it and see if this is actually what GW intended, and this drives us more towards the center or the slightly upper side of other factions, which, to be honest, I don't think it does. I think it drives us to the middle. But my brain is clicking a lot of things that make sense from the reviews that I have done and looking at everything as a sum of their parts and being Tau as a faction looking like they are greater than the sum of their parts when they're put together. This makes a lot of sense to me. I started out, when I went to go record this video, I was like, nope, can't be done, whatever else. I saw the line of text, and there's just a bunch of little puzzle pieces which have fallen into place, and it kind of makes sense why we feel like a weaker faction when looked at through the lens of being a ballistic skill 4 thing that not every unit's able to get the Markerlight sort of, and you know, I say Markerlight, but I mean like our old Markerlight system of +1 to hit. This one's obviously better at ballistic skill, and if they've got the Markerlight keyword ignoring cover, that means that like, you know, a couple of key units in your army are going to be able to benefit from the Markerlight keyword of a unit that you take. Not every unit in your army is going to have the Markerlight keyword. So that is a tactical decision that you make, but everybody else can shoot a little better with worse AP, worse number of shots on burst cannons, high output burst cannon, accelerated burst cannons. Like, our profile's not moving on the Riptide, losing ignore invulns on the Hammerhead and everything else. But if the Hammerhead's hitting on 2s, not to say that it makes it a viable unit in my mind, but that just that it's a little bit better. And it's not complete dog water. Because yes, people are going to save against it, but if you're hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, with a free reroll built into it, and if Shadow Sun's nearby, you're rerolling the hit roll of 1, so you can just do that for the wound reroll. Doesn't it make a lot of sense to people? Doesn't it make sense that just that this is actually a thing and that this isn't a typo? I don't know. Let me know what you think. As always, I am always open to being wrong. I am always open to eating my words and everything else. But just as I've gone through this and pieces have fallen into place, it just makes sense to me with the macro level of the view that I have over the factions and everything else. Because I'm a content creator, I have to review a ton of different things. Because I'm a tournament player that loves being on the higher end, I have to know what my enemies are doing and everything else. This just makes a lot of sense to me. But, again, let me know what you think. Thank you very much to all my patrons who make the videos possible. Thank you to Irresistible Force, who has been an amazing sponsor for me all the way through the lifetime of my channel. There'll be links down in the description. Go and check them out. go and check the Patreon links. And if you want, there is YouTube memberships now to get into the Discord and everything else, which even if you're in for just 1 month, you have access to it for life. And on top of that, anybody who's in either of those until the end of August, even if it's just 1 month that you're able to do it, you will have your name on a cardboard cutout at the GT that I'm running to show everybody how much I appreciate all the support and getting me to the point that I am at now. Thank you very much to everybody. I'm keen to see your thoughts, keen to get some tournament data and also some reps in myself. And I'll see you guys in the next one.